Hey, it's Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of the expert moderators and panelists for being a part of these Insight Jam discussions today. The launch of InsightJam.com has been incredibly rewarding with all of the contributions we're receiving from the experts and solution providers and end users. It's really been quite a sight to see. If you haven't joined InsightJam.com already, please do. And if you have, please invite some of your colleagues to join as well. And again, thanks very much for being here and enjoy today's discussions.
Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, a social media community for enterprise technology. Hi, my name is Jonathan Paula. I am the Director of Multimedia and Events here at Solutions Review, and I'm excited to be emceeing our fourth and final panel of today's Mini Jam Live, and that panel is on Will AI Pose a Threat to the ERP Marketplace? We've assembled 6 gentlemen from around the globe to talk about this. All these experts here, Doug, Arturo, Glenn, Paul, and Shaheen. Thank you one and all for being here with me. I'm really excited to get into this topic. Doug, you've agreed to moderate, so we'll let you go first with the personal introductions. Tell the audience, 30 seconds or less, a bit about yourself and your professional expertise.
Yeah, just quickly, Doug Shannon, Enterprise Intelligent Automation Leader, and jumped into the Gen AI side and now leading a lot of that as well. And you see me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to find me and find out what I'm all about. That's quick.
Awesome. That was quick. Thank you. Appreciate that. Arturo, over to you next.
Yes, Arturo Buzzolino. I'm Vice President of Products and Innovation at Epicor. I lead our manufacturing side of the ERP, a product called Kinetic, as well as innovation and design for the company globally.
Excellent.
Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Glenn, you're up next.
I'm Glenn Graney. I work for QAD, which is an ERP and supply chain software company, but I'm a manufacturing guy. I've been in manufacturing for 40 years, been in plants that make spaghetti sauce and plants that make nuclear weapons and everything in between. So I hope to bring a manufacturing perspective to this panel.
Right on. Appreciate that. Paul Byrne, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Paul Byrne, Program Director with Dragon ERP. We say that we are less consulting puff and more delivery firepower, which is really all about the delivery of ERP systems, successfully delivering ERP systems to customers.
Excellent. Thank you. And our other Paul from Down Under, welcome to the show.
Good morning, everybody from Down Under. So I do advisory services for clients on strategy on how to design and deliver their ERP solutions, specifically SAP, S/4HANA, and related technologies like Gen AI, and done 18 of those around the world so far.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, Shaheen.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Shaheen Hatamian. I'm the Chief Product Officer at ECI Software Solutions. I'm responsible for the overall strategic direction of all of the products that we have at ECI. We cater to multiple different verticals and also data and analytics, and now AI. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you again in advance for your time over the next hour. I'm going to step out of the way and let Doug take things over as moderator and begin with our opening remarks and first question.
Great. Yeah, just we'll jump into it, and then we'll have everybody just kind of like jump in how they feel, and then we'll try to make sure we get around to everybody. But the first question is that we want to pose here is, as AI becomes more accessible and powerful, do you foresee a future where it can replace the role of software suites in the terms of companies and how they're served?
Can I jump in?
Yep.
Doug, straight there. Not being the shy one. So, can it look at the ERP, and it doesn't really matter for me which ERP. I believe that most ERP vendors do not make left-handed screwdrivers. You make a product for the market. Everybody seems to be going wall-to-wall AI, but and I'm asking a genuine question here. Does anybody know any organization that uses their current ERP to its full potential today? That said, and I think I know the answer, I think AI will help to use that functionality that is not available or not being used today.
That's a good point. Does anybody else have a different view, or do they agree? I mean, definitely
Yeah.
ERP is
No,
a huge
I,
space.
I think I agree, sort of. You should never say never, but I don't even think it's the right question. Is that AI until this point has showed great promise in very narrow assisted kind of applications, and not so much for this holistic overview of an entire technology stack. Is that ERP is a beast. It's it's your finance system, it's your bill of material explosion, it's your invoicing system. All of that is more than the current state of AI is really than people are trying to do. I do agree. I think that's a great point earlier, that no one fully is getting everything that their ERP solution could do. As we apply tools like AI to individual functions, I think there's great promise for that.
Yeah, I agree, Glenn, and probably what I would say is, to me, a lot of people right now in the market are talking about ERP as, like ERP and AI as two separate things. The way that I look at it is, look, the ERP is the foundation, right? It's how you're going to get your data in place, your workflows in place in your business. So I think the answer is, will they go away? No, I don't think it'll ever go away. I think it'll change, and I think AI will be part of a tool, right, within the ERP and embedded within the workflows of the business, which I think that's how AI can be successful, right? Is being embedded.
Yeah, I think we extrapolate on the question, right? So I think we all agreeing that AI is not going to replace like the stack. It's not going to replace overall some of the nuances that are going to be within ERP systems. But when you actually bring in Gen AI, how do you see that coming in, and do you see it leveraging existing systems, being part of like the agent-driven economy that could be coming through with some of the stuff that's coming out with Gen AI?
I'm going to be the contrarian here, and I believe that when the compute power gets to the right inflection point, the majority of the code stack in a lot of ERPs will become redundant purely by virtue of the sheer processing power. I fully agree with the comments. Right now, the verticalization of Gen AI specific to individual use cases, as the technology is very nascent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when the compute power gets to a certain point, in its simplest form, an ERP is a pile of data with some business logic on top and a UI. I'm being very simplistic now, but when that compute power it reaches parity, a lot of the majority of the processes that ERP does today are standard. They've been around 30, 40 plus years, and they haven't materially changed in their highest form. I actually think a lot of pressure is going to come on the ERP vendors to make their stacks more composable and more agile than the monolithic structures we see today.
Yeah, if I can jump in as well, I agree. I think that AI is definitely going to accelerate and automate a lot of the workflows that exist today. For sure, the access to Gen AI and things like natural language processing, those types of capabilities, combined with the computing power, is going to allow us to analyze the vast amount of data that exists inside of the ERPs and in the businesses to be able to predict and take action in a more automated way and intelligent way going forward. But the foundations of the different capabilities of the ERP still exist. It's just going to look different, maybe vastly different 10 years from now from what we know it today. But there's still going to be a part of the system that's going to do the inventory decisioning, a part of the system that's going to do the financial decisioning. A lot of it is going to be decisions that are potentially made automatically, and the role of the ERP operator is going to be more of handling the exceptions. The workflows will be more automated. They're going to be based on data and expertise that the system has been trained on, but then there's still going to be a role for people having to engage with it and solve for exceptions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think on that, right? So let's dig into that. So there's a lot of companies that are coming out, and there's a lot of startups that are coming out that are driving individual items in the same field. They're using AI and Gen AI to drive some of this. So I guess the question here for ERP wise is, when do you think it's all going to be combined? When do you think that some of these startups that are coming in and doing one side of this or another side of this and building like these niche opportunities, when are they coming in? When is that going to be a part of the whole enterprise or the whole ERP aspect?
So if I could jump in there, it looks like today, in my view, it's very Wild West. Everyone thinks it's the California gold rush. Everyone's going to make millions, right?
Everybody's got a
It's
shovel,
not.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's run into that hill, right? Where it comes from maturity from me, you've got let's just call it Microsoft have got they basically own the productivity suite that most corporates use. They're going to want wall-to-wall AI with their Copilot, and the smart ERP vendors, which I think all of them are. Some of them are better at other things, at certain things right now. Others are better at other things, but they all kind of catch up and they level the playing field to a certain degree. Whoever can manipulate that handshake between the productivity suite, your office suite, and your ERP, and get that whole flow running end to end. You start manipulating the data. Now, if I could just jump back a tiny little piece, I used to have a saying, I still kind of like it. I think if any of us started using Office 97 of 1997 today, until the day we leave this planet, we would not use all the functionality within the Office suite. Now, you extrapolate that out to an ERP system. I'm not talking about Office, 365, whatever, with all this new functionality. I'm talking about an Office suite that's 30 years old, nearly 25 years old. So the functionality that's in any and every ERP system, if you can get your office worker, your
Yeah.
intelligent
Like the
worker,
ease of use, right? Yeah. If you can bring
Yep.
the ease of use to the user, they're going to be able to drive it and actually be more enabled to pick it up and run with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then bring that the whole way right through seamlessly into the ERP so that people can manipulate the data, the processes, and you've got a shot at the, I don't want to use the SAP here, but the intelligent enterprise.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, Arturo, did you have something there? Yeah.
No, I was going to add, I think, with generative AI specifically, large language models, I think from a UX perspective, because I think that's where Paul was headed, right? It's just like, right, ease of use. I think we're living through the moment, but it's going to be, especially in the next 2 to 3 years, similar to the introduction of the touch screen in the iPhone, how it changed technology. I think ERP is going to change in that way. And I think in many ways, it's the companies that don't, right, make that change successfully, then they're going to have trouble launching those things and actually like expanding in the market. And then conversely, on like the customer side, is the customers or manufacturers or I have some bias because of all of our users are manufacturing, but the companies that are ready for that revolution, meaning, right, you have an ERP installed, you have your data in order. Those are the kinds of things that AI is going to need in order to unlock all that value, right?
If I can
Filtering
jump in.
everything.
Yeah, I agree with Arturo, and I think something you said at the end, which is if you have your data in order and your ERP in order. My perspective is from the small, medium-sized businesses, which is our core constituency at ECI. And it is a journey for them. So all of the things that Paul, Arturo talked about will come to fruition. We're going to see more streamlined touchscreen, analogy of the UI. But with the SMB customers, it's a little bit longer journey. First, we have to kind of make sure their data is in order, make sure that they see the value of data, and that that data is quality enough that you can use it as a basis for AI, because otherwise it's going to be garbage in, garbage out from a decision-making process perspective. So that's why there's a little bit of a longer kind of hand-holding period, if you will, with smaller companies to be able to show them, demonstrate them the value of data, the value of analytics, and ultimately AI is going to be the capstone that you put on top of that.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things I worry about with data, and I'm a clean data guy. I mean, nobody wants dirty data, right? But particularly the small and medium folks, I worry about whether the data really promotes best practices. Is that every ERP user that you go to will say, oh, I got 30 years worth of data. But is it the right data, even if cleaned? Is that no one would say that they should be basing their forecast based on the last 5 years worth of data, because the world has been turned upside down. And so they have 30 years worth of very closed, very intellectual property kind of data. I think the onus will be on suppliers like ERP firms to provide best practices training for some of this AI as it's delivered, because they don't, if you ask ChatGPT or OpenAI, I'm going to take away all of the information about modern art. Will you ever get to Picasso? And the answer is no. Is that it'll say, no, I'll never get there. Is that because with just that very contained set of data that's flawed in some ways, their processes have been flawed, you cannot base a future state of preference on the flawed data.
Yeah, no, I think that really comes into play into one of like the next potential questions here, and we're kind of already talking about it now. Whereas, if you're doing ERP and your leaders are looking to bring in AI, what are some of those considerations that these companies should be looking at? If your C-suite's coming down and saying we want to do AI, we want Gen AI now, and you're the one supporting the ERP system, you're saying, okay, that's great, but what are some of those considerations?
Three things.
Go on.
Strategy, data, and culture. You need the strategy first. What are you trying to achieve? The data, I'm listening to what everyone's saying, and I work in the SME space, but primarily in the big end of town, right? So the very large clients is my principal focus. Data is a problem. The quality and the veracity of data is a problem. And we talk about hallucination. Well, I'll challenge that statement. It's not really hallucinating. It's giving you a response based on the code line, right? It's not really hallucinating if you look at it technologically, and look at that. So strategy, culture, and data. So what are you trying to achieve? Is the culture, is the organization, digital transformation? Is it able to actually step up and consume it? And then you're going to unleash your technology. I tell clients when they go from say ECC to S4HANA. If your data is not in order, all you're going to do is go from bad decision making to really fast bad decision making, and AI is no different. Your data veracity determines your outlook. I mean, just look at some of the stories you see already around Canada Air, where the AI went and wrote another policy. So that may be humorous, but that poses some serious challenges to enterprises. You want to unleash this thing in the world in a productive state, and quite often customer facing. You better be ready for the response, and that response is predicated on the quality of your data.
Yeah, I mean, the one point that really talks to me in there is the fast of the data. Like, we're moving faster than we ever have, and we have the technology, and this technology is innovative, but it's also pushing faster. And even though that in your three criteria that you mentioned, first being strategy, I'm actually leaning sometimes in regards to companies is sometimes our cultures are wrong, because when you have a company, I mean, you have individuals here in the manufacturing space and other spaces all around the world, and I can imagine if we ask, like, is culture an issue that you see, predominantly when you're talking to different businesses and even in other businesses?
Massive.
Yeah, I like that Iron Man, that scene from the Iron Man movie when he's pushing the rollerblade, but eventually the rollerblade catches up with him and starts pushing him. I think that's a really good way. I try and illustrate to clients: be careful what you wish for, because pretty soon the blade's not only going to catch up, it's going to start pushing you.
Right. And if you're focusing on strategy, but then your company or the people that are working in the company aren't ready, like that, like it's going to catch up to you faster than you realize. And I think that's part of it. So definitely, is there any other things that anybody would want to mention about what to prepare for in this new coming world?
I just wanted to mention, just like with any other new thing that you're trying to implement, the cost and the ROI should also be a top of mind for any business who wants to do this. Certainly, you know, everybody's representing AI as the holy grail and it's going to solve all kinds of problems. But, you know, first of all, there's maybe some simple processes or workflows that don't necessarily need AI because you can solve for it with, you know, basic type of decisioning. And then there's a cost, right? We know that there is, you know, token cost, all of that with Gen AI, but there's going to be a cost associated with all of this automation and capability. So you got to take the good with the bad and do that ROI for every case to see if it makes sense.
And on the automation side, I can tell you, we know the cost, but on the Gen AI side, it's kind of nebulous at the moment, and so there's some worry there. But Paul, did you want to add something there? I think you were saying.
I kind of wanted to hit in with, and it's a kind of almost three-way question. Troy, you said something about ERP systems will change. Maybe I'm going to kind of go against that because I think the functionality in the ERP systems are there or thereabouts. They'll mature a bit more because you're still doing your MRP and your sales and your manufacturing, your production planning and whatever. But the touch screen and the benefits you get out of it, yes. Shaheen, where you said it might take longer with SMBs to get because of the data issue, I think that some of the largest organizations I've dealt with, their data is in a real mess, even bigger mess than some of the smaller companies. The smaller companies sometimes think that they're worse, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point,
so
Paul. But yeah, Arturo, you go ahead and I'll
no,
jump in.
I was going to unpack that a little bit. But what I was going to say is, you know, when I say the ERP is going to change, I think right now ERP is an extremely powerful piece of software. It is very difficult to know what you're doing. It's not like any B2C kind of software where you just jump in and you can kind of figure out what you're doing. You have to know, right? You have to get trained. You have to understand the workflows. You have to understand everything that happens, and it's not super intuitive. I think what's going to happen is with particularly generative AI, again, with large language models, is it's going to kind of lower that bar, right? Where maybe you had to have highly trained people interacting with it. Now, all of a sudden, it's going to be so simple that even a child could interact with it. So I think that's the kind of things that we're going to see. And if anything, it's going to make ERP that much more valuable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think what Paul was kind of leading to there was talking, you know, and again, to Shaheen's point, small and medium-sized businesses are going to have an easier time in doing this. I'm doing this on the enterprise side, and the enterprises I've talked to outside of my own, you know, it's rough because the data, because the filtering, because the labeling of the data, and what's the nuance around that data, and then are you governing it correctly or building the governance in. So your small and medium companies, you know, when you hear in the news that the next big $1 billion company is going to be some small business, there's a really good chance of that because of this barrier to entry is lowered. I think, Paul, you were saying?
There's the other side of the coin, right? There's always FMA, first movers advantage. You look at Microsoft announced a partnership with OpenAI, $100 billion DC, and we all know that that's just going to be an AI farm, right? I'm scared to sit somewhere up in a space station and switch the lights off and see the thermal signature of that farm. But just have a think about the amount of data that those kind of corporates or that capability can hoover up versus a small business. And I would say I agree with you. You know, you're making life easier for an SME. But it's also creating a larger disparity because those with that kind of economic muscle can hoover up larger data sets and make maneuvering changes that are on a scale that beggar belief. The little guys, they stand a good chance of just being run right over. That's just a perspective I have. I'd love to hear other views.
Run over acquired, right? Yeah.
Well, I think scale is important. Is that when we look at the scope of AI and what people have tried to do, oftentimes, if you pick asset management, the GEs and the Pratt Whitneys can invest tons of money into predictive maintenance for jet engines because they're very critical, they're very expensive, and we all want them to stay in the air. I mean, you know, it's you know, so the ROI is easy. If I go to a manufacturer of dog food bags and he has one printer that his whole business is dependent on. The only data set he has is a little bit. He doesn't have data set from all the other printers that are ever built. He doesn't have data sets that, and he doesn't have a data scientist. If he, is that, do you ever go to a small business and say, well, who's your data scientist? If they have one, he works in finance, and he doesn't work for the core piece of the business. So that's a cultural worry I have about the small and medium business really grabbing these tools in their current form, and I think they will evolve. I mean, the democratization of this technology is really what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and Glenn, I agree, and I think that's the role that we have, or at least for my company, the role that we play as the trusted partner for these small, medium-sized businesses that are not necessarily tech savvy, to enable them with these capabilities to aggregate the data, bring in data from third-party sources that would allow them to use the automation and take advantage of AI. And that's the way we view it. So I have to disagree a little bit with Paul, because there's always going to be a need for entrepreneurial, small, medium-sized businesses. That's what this country is built upon. So, the small lumberyard or the small, home builder is not going away. There's always a need for them, for the services they offer. It's just that, are they going to be able to do it as efficiently as a big kahuna in the market? And I think the technology vendors like us are going to make sure that they are going to be able to compete.
Right.
And I think, Shaheen, well, if I may, real quick, Shaheen, because I strongly agree with what you're saying, because I think a lot of these customers, these manufacturers, they don't have time to start, implementing AI, right? It's a big reason why a lot of them are moving from on-prem to the cloud, right? Which is not having to manage the hardware. It's the same thing, right? Like, now I have to manage AI. They just, don't have that kind of time. So they'll look for us, like the vendors, right, to solve that for them. And so that question, which is this, right? Will AI pose a threat to ERP? I think the answer is no. I think ERP is going to become the vehicle, one of the vehicles, right, for AI adoption for a lot of these companies.
Yeah. So with democratization, right? So we were talking about that a little bit in the different talks we had just here. And so if we have AI coming in and ERP is also one of those drivers, then what do the customers do? Do they wait and wait till AI and Gen AI becomes more democratized, gets more use cases, or do we look at it and say, do we charge forward, and what does that look like? And so what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, but
I think
back. Go on.
Yep. I think it's, in some ways, when I talk to manufacturers, they don't really want to buy AI. They want to buy outcomes. And so there's an old Harvard business saying, I don't want to buy a drill, I want to buy holes. Is that I don't really want to own the drill. If I can get a hole where I need it, then I don't need a drill. I'm not sure in the current world whether AI is the hole or the drill or the concept that you might need to manipulate.
Or maybe it's everything.
It's what it is. But so when we talk to those small to medium business, we talk about, hey, we have forecasting tools. One of the algorithms you can use is AI based, but I'm not sure it is always the right one. Is that regression might be the right one. So providing AI options for delivering outcomes is the very best way that we currently feel like you can serve that group of that need.
Yeah, it's a very important point. I agree with that.
And I would say, to Paul's earlier point about the culture, there's a lot of ways that you can start using AI just to get acclimated with it, right? It doesn't always have to be like jump right in with both feet into the ERP part of this or mission critical part of your business, whatever that case may be. But you can start using AI in your back office capabilities. Certainly all of you guys, probably in your companies, you're exploring that as well as thinking about it in your product. So we are doing the same thing, right? As if it's making it easier for your marketing efforts, or if it's making it easier for your support team to take advantage of AI, or even like the Office suite, as someone was mentioning earlier, just using that. I suspect that the the manufacturers of the world and our customers are all starting to dabble in that and start using it in their personal lives.
Yep.
And then this is going to be a gradual, growth and learning towards using it inside the product.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely growth going to happen. I think we're all kind of agreeing here that it's better to do something than wait, because even on the cultural side, you're going to learn a lot from that. And one of the things that I usually look at is I think Gen AI is going to bring a mirror and kind of show us and put a mirror towards humanity as it is, and say, like, here's how we can do better, and here's what that looks like, or here's what you're doing inside. And you put a mirror on your organization and say, here's what's wrong with it, here's what we're seeing with it, and then here's how you can drive that forward, right? So,
Yeah.
does anybody else have any points on that?
I was just going to say, we also have to be careful, because I think it is to Glenn's point, which is solving very specific problems, right? Like an outcome. Like, what is it that we're trying to search for? Because, like, we say AI in general, like, it's really difficult, right? Like, that can be like anything, right? There are some things that, like, large language models are really good at solving. There's other things that, like, a neural network, right, might be required to solve some very specific problem. I think we also have to look at it that way, right? AI is almost too broad of a term, right, to just say, right, it's going to solve all these problems, because it really depends on what you're trying to solve for.
Yeah, I mean, AI in general is a hard.
An expert.
What was that?
That plus everybody's an expert, right? So have you noticed that everyone's an expert in
especially
AI?
these six people. These six people are the biggest experts on.
Sorry, I have a glance at LinkedIn, and I look at some of the stuff, and it's like, well, and in this forum particularly, we would appreciate the nuances and complexities that are involved in AI, and there are ethics and liabilities and risks that are involved in deploying it. So, it's a serious consideration before organizations jump in. And I like that comment around, you don't have to go for mission critical. You can start on something in the back office, for example. Really good point.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing more bias and information come up to understand, like, what is data bias, and we're really in the space of AI and Gen AI. The many talks that even I've been in, where we're talking about, like, well, what does it mean, and the fact that as humans, it comes back to a very human aspect, that we all carry biases with us, no matter who you are. We have like 50 biases at all times, and so we have to be aware of that. And the data, kind of, we talked about in the beginning, the data itself is biased because we put it in there. It's kind of our fault. So how do we get around that? And again, with the filtering and the labeling of the data, it does help. But then where do you start with that? And especially in large ERP systems, it's huge. So AI, may have the ability to drive some of that filtering or provide some context, and maybe there's some use cases there. But on the terms of use case, are there any use cases that maybe you're seeing, or in the space, that people aren't looking at but they should look at? Is there any kind of, like, hey, you should be looking at this in the ERP side of this?
Can I just go back to that point? But I'm not sure who said it earlier. But if we're looking at large language models and we're using your data set that you take out of your ERP, considering that, sorry, and I don't remember who said it earlier, that our world has been turned upside down in the last 2 years. If we're using that data model as an example, as a large language model, are we not screwing the pooch to start off with, because the world has changed? So are we not flawed from the start?
I mean, technically, in the last 2 years with the pandemic and whatnot, you could say that, but it really depends on what data was actually captured. So if you have data before then and after then, and it does change over time. Yes, it goes back to the points that we made earlier, where it has to be good data. But what is good data? And is good data even good if it's biased? So there's a lot in there.
Well, I think
most of the data is structured, right? Most of the stuff that sits in an ERP is not unstructured data. But the virtue of Gen AI is it can go over structured and unstructured data, or data source that doesn't care.
Yeah. So that's part of the hallucination part, right?
Yeah, you're going to add a little different perspective from a past life. Before getting into ERPs, I worked for InsurTech, and there was a rush to learn everything that was in the head of the claims adjusters in the insurance space. and capture that in the expert systems by automating that, because there was a new wave of new adjusters coming into the market, younger people who don't have all of that knowledge. And I think there's going to be a very similar approach here where a lot of the best practices are going to have to get codified and built into the AI models, because what you have in your data may not necessarily be sufficient. There's going to be a period of training and capturing the best practices. So again, thinking about it from a vendor perspective, we need to be thinking about not just relying on the data that's available today, but also how do we improve upon the models going forward?
Yeah. I mean, so going forward, I mean, what are the panel here? What do we think the ERP system with AI and Gen AI coming into play, even with some of the hardware stuff that's coming in? There's new hardware that's making these large language models even smaller. You can even potentially build agents, like AI agents. Potentially, even there's Microsoft Copilot coming out. What does the next 5 years look like? And so, if we can theorize on that and see what we come up with, since there is a time delay, like what do we think?
Well, I think we're at the maximum hype curve right now. I mean, it's, everyone wants to talk about it, and it's a little messy because it overflows into our private lives. It's every commercial you see on TV, the robot's ordering its own spare parts because it knows. And I've never been to a plant where a procurement guy would let a robot order its own spare parts. But that's if I relate it to any technology curve, in 1983, and I'm giving away my age here, I was on a bus to something called Robot 7 in Chicago. And robots were going to take over the world. And all of McCormick Place was full of robot vendors who 90% of them don't exist anymore. And what happened was robots found if you own a car, it was welded with a robot. If you own a car, it was painted with a robot. But generally speaking, there's still a lot of people touching parts in manufacturing because they weren't the right place for the technology. I think to tie that back to ERP and AI, I think there are going to still be decision points throughout this management of this complex, Arturo said it, this is a very complex business system. I think that what we'll find over time is there'll be some projects that fail and AI isn't a great fit, and there'll be places where it does fit. And I that's my confidence, is that that's where we want to be without trashing the system, trying to force AI into every spot possible.
Yeah, I mean, going back to basic project management and the many ERP or AI projects or even automation projects, like sometimes like something like 90%, if not more, fail, and we're going to have to find what works and doesn't work, but understand that failure is part of the learning process, and I think that's key there. Anybody else, like 5 years ahead from now, like what does it look like?
I think
5 years ahead, I would say, as Arturo said earlier, there's going to be a lot of streamlining of the user interfaces of the products. They're going to be more simplified. There's going to be more automation of the workflows. That's just the, kind of like what we have today. How do we take advantage of AI? But then beyond that, again, with the NLP, with even like image processing, the machine vision, with, those types of capabilities, I would assume there's going to be a lot more of using that. Like, right now, if you have to take inventory of material manually, you can take advantage of machine vision to be able to take that kind of inventory taking automatically, or using, more advanced OCR capabilities in processing your invoices that you potentially have to do that manually today. So there's definitely going to be a lot more riding on, just the multimedia AI capabilities, both voice and image.
I'll add my thoughts real quick. And I think in the next 5 years, I actually think it'll be a revolution of software. I think, again, going back to my point, akin to the introduction of the iPhone and the touchscreen, where Uber in 2004 seemed impossible, but in 2014, 10 years later, it was possible. I think we're going to see similar things where things were impossible 5 years ago. In 5 years are going to be possible. And so I think ERP has a responsibility to introduce those cutting edge technologies into the current workflows so that the customers can then adopt it.
So
Let's say that just real quick. I was gonna say the Uber thing is a really good point but it's an interesting point because Uber started back then and they weren't actually cost positive until like last year. So
But can I just go to Glenn's point where he said, jumping back, was it to 19 whatever? To
81,
go
83.
forward, we need to go back, I believe, to uh, when I was a kid. They were telling us you need to book your place in your country club and your tennis club because there's going to be no space left because there's going to be no job for you left to do. This is addressing the AI is going to steal everybody's jobs. I don't know about you guys, but I've never worked as hard in my life as I do today. So in 5 years' time, how will that have changed? If we look at blockchain and IoT, all wonderful technologies, but none of them have taken over the world. I agree, it's a massive step change, but how much will it change? I don't know.
Yeah. I think we'll see, right? I know that when automation came out, one of the biggest things you saw is all of the platform vendors, be it Salesforce to ServiceNow to the ERP players, all started to bring in automation, right? So we're going to start seeing the same thing. We're going to start seeing every large company that is needed to grow 18% every year. They're all going to bring this in and they're going to say, here's what the value is and here's where that looks like. But again, to the Uber thing, like maybe they do it, but they're not profitable with it. And so there's a chance of, again, that failure, or again, that growth state of being democratized like we've talked about here. So there's some
Yeah, I
wins
think
there. Yeah.
just to challenge that a little bit, Doug, I'd also be careful to over-index on Uber being not profitable, because that was also kind of the how the market behaved, right? Like
How it works,
for
right?
many
Yeah.
years, right? Yeah, like
Funding
growth
and
growth
yeah.
over anything. So we also need to be a little careful there. But what I was going to say is I think with, again, it's going back to solving very specific problems, and I think the companies that do that the best, and it's going slow to go fast, right? So over the next 5 years, it's going to be a ramp up. So it doesn't mean like, oh no, like I have to implement AI like tomorrow. No, I think what it does mean though is starting to solve, getting to those outcomes that were mentioned earlier. So it's like solving for very specific problems. And by the way, if that problem involves language, large language models are really good at that, right? So I think if
Right.
approach that way, I think it'll get to that vision, right, of the 5 years. And the companies that do that the best are going to be able to make that transition.
Yeah, even your
Yeah,
companies that are multi-language or different countries helping out or coming into different, cultures and individuals, like that does help with the language bias there or language understanding, even from a mentor-mentee relationship too. Yeah.
and look at the vendors. They weren't always entirely successful. SAP launched Leonardo in 2017 originally as an IoT solution for everything, right? Does anyone know Leonardo anywhere else? It fell down because it tried to be too many things. They promoted it through from IoT into AI, and it just wasn't ready. The compute wasn't ready. The maturity of the models wasn't ready, and it basically fell down. But look, here we are, a couple of years later, and we've got Joule, and Joule is flying. I've played around with it, and it's fantastic. So yeah, 100% agree. There'll be some failures along the way, but I think we're at that inflection point now where it's commercially viable. But to the point, you've got to have specific problems that you want to point it at. And like any technology, it's agnostic, right? It's how you use it that determines its value. So it's exciting times. In 5 years' time, I'll be the contrarian again, and I would say, what stops an AI sitting on an SME company's technology stack and doing passive learning, and then basically taking over the business logic and routines and just running it natively? Why not?
Yeah. I mean, you could say that, although luckily AI is not that smart yet. So there are
You
some
know,
that's
but
some future.
Close, it's getting close.
It's
I,
getting, especially now that your data used to be the gold, right? However data you can get, now it's compute power, right? So now we're looking at how much compute is there, and the hope. I'm guessing at this point from the people that are putting all this compute into play, be it Microsoft and the other, and OpenAI and everyone else, is that that's where they're hoping to get to that next stage of potentially AGI and even ASI, which is way down the line, hopefully. we'll see. There's lots of different things in the market, people talking about it. So I think one of the almost last questions overall, what I do want to see is that, let's see, the final question here at least is, so when you have so we're still in the early stage of AI. We see how like Gen AI is coming in, and possibly different forms of AI are going to solve some of these niche issues that we're talking to, or these niche use cases, so that we can get that ease of use and we can get that next phase of how things are brought in. The question there is, if we're in a place where AI is so versatile, when does it become no longer needed to really be different, like to be run on different systems, where maybe the AI does all the ERP, or maybe the ERP system, since it's so large, they adopt it in a way that they don't need to involve like a different AI. They have their own model that they can build on, taking that enterprise data. So really the question is, like, when is it no longer necessary? When is it going to be like a one cohesive, unit, or one cohesive, like, automation
I
enterprise?
would say by 2030, the compute power will be there. I'm going to be the risk taker in the conversation. And
the date.
Yeah,
Sorry?
I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, I have heard 2029 AGI, right? There are scientists that believe that. So I don't know. It's hard to predict. What I think, though, what's going to happen is, I'm going to go back to the same point. I think ERP, to me, is a great vehicle, if not the vehicle, to get your data in order. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not going to get it perfect, but it's going to get it pretty good, to where when you are ready for that AI jump, or the compute is powerful enough to take it, the companies that are ready and are set up that way will just have a leg up, right, in adopting and plugging those things right in.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that small and medium-sized businesses have that leg up already, because they don't have all the data to go off of? They're just going to take whatever Stripe data, whatever they got going on, the Square data, and then have an AI agent be able to take that and run that compute power and kind of do that?
I don't think that we can make that broad statement for all of the customers. I think there's going to be a period of looking at, and again, the role that we play in this is to help the customers to look at their data and look at the, what they're trying to do and what are the best practices, and trying to come up with an approach where we can serve, our industries, our customers, our base with some recommendations. Again, I keep going back to the role that we play as a trusted advisors, speaking for SMBs, right? To be able to navigate those things.
Yeah, I think we're a long way away from saying, okay, what we want to do is reduce cost and maximize profitability. AI go. It's the problem is complex. The computing power will help, but I think that the manufacturer will struggle with, what does that mean, just to let AI do this? It will require an ecosystem of consultants and solutions to position this to solve problems, one at a time, or in groups. I think that I'm not worried about singularity in the ERP space.
Yeah, that we're around there. Yeah, so we're at the 10-minute mark, right? So I want to make sure we give time back to you guys and the businesses that you are representing. And so if we want to go around the mix and kind of say anything that you may want to, we got, on my screen, it's Arturo. Do you want to go and talk about Epicor?
Sure. Yeah, I'll spend 30 seconds. So Epicor, been around for about 50 years. We basically build ERP for manufacturing, distribution, and retail are three kind of verticals that we focus on. We like to say the make, move, sell economy. I think Epicor is in a very interesting place. Obviously, I lead innovation, so AI is almost my everyday. So I can comfortably say that we're well on our way to rolling out some very interesting things later this summer. In May, we have our big Insights conference coming up, where we're going to spend a ton of time with our customers. So looking forward to that. Maybe some of you have tuned in. So looking forward to meeting you guys there. But we're going to be rolling out some pretty interesting things here over the next 4 months. So excited for that.
Yeah, thanks, Arturo, and then we'll have Glenn.
Sure. QAD is 40 years old. We're a software ERP company and supply chain products that do upstream, supplier management through full ERP down to transportation solutions. I think that we only do manufacturing. We're focused on a number of verticals: automotive, life sciences, industrial, and food and beverage, and a few others. I think that most recently, we are wrapping ourselves around that people are an important part of every solution. So we extend that with a connected worker solution. And just to summarize my view of the discussion today, I think QAD can, we are very focused on AI, but from a pragmatic standpoint, in that, we want to deliver outcomes without really getting engaged around a platform. I had the good fortune to go to Molex, which is the supply chain show, and Gerd Leonard, A Future Narrative, was there. And I'll paraphrase him. The good thing about AI is that we should be optimistic, not because we have less problems, but because we have better tools to solve the problems we have. And I think that's our QAD sees AI as that tool.
Yeah, I like it. I think there's some good points there around people and process, and you guys do a lot there, it seems. Paul from Ireland and Dragon ERP.
So, Dragon ERP, we started over about just over a year ago. We calculated back then that amongst the 3 founding members, we had 93 years ERP implementation experience. I need to revisit that number because we've grown in size since then. We see ourselves as less consulting puff, more delivery firepower. It's all about customer success and ERP agnostic. Just get the thing in there, make it successful, make the customer successful. That's what we're all about.
That's winning, right? Make sure everybody's on the same page and successful. I like it. Paul from Australia.
So Big Blue Advisory, we're a boutique consulting advisory, and we specialize in primarily SAP. We're agnostic, but most of the industry that we operate in is SAP. With the advisory around the strategy, so business case, approach, adoption, digital transformation, and then the other component, which is the less glamorous side, is the rescue. So doing advisory services to C-suite around the SAP technologies and adoption, and very similar to what was mentioned before, less focus on the technology itself and rather on the business outcomes.
Great. Yeah, I mean, advisory services are key, right? So I think that's fantastic. Shaheen, we'll go to you for the last there.
Sure. Again, at ECI, we make ERP and other solutions for several verticals geared towards SMB market for manufacturing, lumber and hardware distribution, field service, and residential home construction. And really my goal as the CPO, very similar to Arturo, is to introduce more innovation to our customers. And what we are doing with AI is to really make AI approachable for our small, medium-sized customers, to really support that entrepreneurial spirit that they have, to help them be successful and navigate around all issues surrounding technology, but in this case, AI. So.
Excellent. Thank you, one and all. I wanted to come back in at the end of the show here. And before I give my final remarks, I want to tee up Doug to do any self-promo for yourself.
Sure. So I'm in a bunch of different councils, and some of those are based out of Washington, D.C. with the The Institute that does Gen AI and efforts there to kind of figure out what's going on in the world around us and providing services there. And then Vocal Council, which is a voice of the customer and automation landscape. And then also part of GEAR, the Gartner Peer Ambassador team over there. And so in a lot of spaces, just follow me on LinkedIn if you have any questions around Gen AI and automation, and I'll be happy to connect with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much again, Doug. Appreciate your time moderating, and appreciate all of you for participating and giving us your expertise over the last 60 minutes. That will do it for this panel and all 4 of our discussions today for Mini Jam Live. But we would certainly encourage you to do some self-promo for us. So visit youtube.com/@InsightJam for our brand new YouTube channel. We have 38,000 subscribers and growing. It is a great repository for all of these long form panel discussions. We have short expert advice. We have our podcast videos, and that channel is growing by leaps and bounds every day. So hopefully we'll see you over there. And I also would be remiss if I didn't mention InsightJam.com, our always on tech community site, a social media community. You can interact and engage with like-minded tech professionals, experts. Go to their spaces, watch videos, post, do live shows. It is a very exciting community that is similarly growing each and every day, and we hope we can get more of you to sign up and join us over there. That will do it for today, though. Thank you again to the 6 gentlemen on screen with me for your time today, and thank you for watching and listening. My name is Jonathan Paula, and we hope to see you for the next Inside Jam, probably sometime later in Q2. Till then, have a good one.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was
Bye.
brilliant.